Well, I'm glad they're cutting off WIC and food stamps because there's people out there that cheat the government and don't really need them. That's not who the fuck we're concerned about. Think. Like, obviously, the people that are scamming it, the people that are taking advantage of the system, they'll be fine. That's not who we're concerned about. We're concerned about the people that are disabled, the elderly, the low-income families that are working hard or that can't work, or whatever the reason. And as a matter of fact, I see this how I see abortion. It's none of your fucking business why they're on there, so don't fucking worry about it. Like, have some fucking compassion. Have some empathy. Like, literally the same fucking empathy you guys had for Trump when they shot his ear. An ounce of that is needed for this. Gosh, you guys are so fucking stupid.
Let's talk numbers. SNAP fraud rate, less than 1%. 1%. Corporate tax evasion, costs $60 billion annually. Defense contractor overcharges, billions more. But the crisis is someone maybe buying extra chips with food stamps. Here's what kills me. Empathy became conditional. People found endless compassion when their preferred politician got injured. Prayers, concern, outrage for days. But families choosing between food and rent should have worked harder. That's not fiscal conservatism. That's selective humanity. The enemy isn't your neighbor earning minimum wage with an EBT card. It's the system that made you both struggle while the wealthy paid less in taxes than you did. Stop letting politicians redirect your anger downward when the money's flowing upward.
Oh, there's people taking advantage of the system. There's people that don't actually need it. You could not pay me to care. I quite literally could not care less if my tax dollars are going towards feeding someone. I don't care if they really need it or not. Most of them do. We're not going to get into that. The very small percentage of people are taking advantage of it. But please, take advantage of it because our government is taking advantage of us. Do you really want your tax dollars funding Israel's genocide of Palestinians? Do you want your tax dollars paying for the ballroom? Do you want your tax dollars paying for 2 private jets for the Homeland Security, whatever her ugly face is? Would you rather your tax dollars be going to all of these horrible things that are hurting Americans and hurting other people that don't deserve it rather than helping feed a family? Like, what kind of sick reality do you live in that you would rather your $24 a year, roughly, I'm pretty sure that's the number I've seen many times now, that's about how much you pay in taxes a year towards SNAP. You would rather that go towards killing people rather than feeding people. Is that what you're telling me?
Every SNAP dollar generates $1.70 in economic activity. It's not charity, it's stimulus. Keeping grocery stores open, supply chains moving, employees working. You cut SNAP, rural stores close, jobs disappear, food deserts expand, prices rise for everyone because there's less demand in the system. You pay $24 annually for food assistance. You pay thousands for military contracts, corporate subsidies to profitable companies, foreign interventions accomplishing nothing. But grandma's $150 monthly grocery budget is the problem? The money exists. Always has. It's just going to people who already have it instead of people dying without it. Wake up, you're being robbed while they point at your struggling neighbor and call them the thief.
Because you understand that every $1 of SNAP that goes into the system generates about $1, I think it's like 70 cents of economic, because you understand that companies like Walmart, they expect the SNAP money to go back into their system so that our prices stay down. Because all this is going to do is make everyone's prices go up. You understand that, right? Like, I'm really starting to question the reality that some of you live in because it's not the reality we're living in. It's not.
Why is college in America so insanely expensive? Right now, Americans owe $1.7 trillion in student loan debt, and 1 in 4 borrowers are in default. Before the 1960s, banks were extremely careful. They only lent small amounts and only for degrees that had a realistic chance of paying off. So if you couldn't afford college, you just simply couldn't go, which meant colleges couldn't charge crazy amounts because people couldn't afford crazy amounts. But in 1965, the government started to guarantee student loans. Suddenly, lenders weren't taking any risk. If borrowers didn't pay them back, the government, as in the taxpayer, would cover the losses. So an 18-year-old could borrow tens of thousands of dollars with no collateral and no ability to pay it back anytime soon. In any normal capitalist market, prices are limited by whatever customers are able to pay out of their pocket. But once the government started to guarantee the loans, students weren't paying with cash. They were paying with whatever they could borrow. They were paying with future debt debt that's backed by the US Treasury. A family who could only afford to pay $3,000 for college could now afford $30,000 because the money wasn't coming from them, it was coming from debt. If students can borrow more, colleges can charge more. So they did. With unlimited guaranteed money flooding in, colleges had no incentive to control costs. Administrative staff exploded. Campuses added luxury dorms, lazy rivers, climbing walls. From 1980 to 2020, college tuition went up 1,200%. That's faster than inflation, wages, and even healthcare costs. That's why college tuition is so expensive. Now in part 2, we'll talk about how to fix it.
This is the blueprint. Government intervention without accountability creates perverse incentives everywhere. Before the 1960s, banks only lent small amounts for degrees likely to pay off. If you couldn't afford college, you didn't go, so colleges couldn't charge insane amounts. Then government guaranteed the loans. Lenders took zero risk. An 18-year-old could borrow tens of thousands with no collateral, no ability to repay. Colleges saw unlimited money and charged unlimited prices. Tuition rose 1,200%. Administrative bloat exploded. Luxury dorms, lazy rivers, climbing walls, all funded by debt. Students will repay for decades. The solution isn't more government or less government. It's smarter intervention, guarantees with price caps, assistance with accountability, investment preventing problems instead of managing disasters. But nuance doesn't win elections.
Slaves are all over the world. Slaves still exist today.
Do you think there's a direct effect from slavery to how Black Americans are able to live today?
No, I don't. They have a chance to learn. They live in the best country in the world. If they open their eyes and listen, instead of just focusing on their little area and people that they hang out with, they would learn a lot.
But you see why they don't like Trump is because he's not a politician. He works for you and I. The guy has been a businessman all his life. Mm-hmm. He's made millions and billions of dollars. Why? Because he knows how to work with the people.
You can't call someone just like you, then call them a billionaire in the next breath. Those are incompatible realities. A billionaire doesn't choose between medication and groceries, doesn't worry about making rent, has never experienced financial insecurity you face daily. And when policies destroy your retirement savings, when you can't retire after 40 years of following the rules, the answer is keep working. That's not leadership. That's cruelty dressed as advice. If someone's policies consistently produce the opposite of promised results, stop believing the promises. Results matter more than rhetoric. And definitely don't trust billionaires claiming they understand your struggle. They don't, and they never will.
How can you say he's just like you and I when you in the next breath say he's a billionaire?
What's wrong with being a billionaire?
Nothing inherently, but if you're going to be a billionaire businessman, you can't start blaming everything that goes wrong on the people beneath you, on your workers.
Who's he blaming?
Everyone in his cabinet got either fired or just called nicknames by him.
All the tariffs and everything that caused the economy to plummet that he implemented.
Amen. Thank you, Donald Trump. Thank you, President Trump.
Really?
Yeah.
Even though people's 401ks have just plummeted?
Well, quit investing in foreign products. Invest in the United States.
No, but I'm saying someone who wanted to retire has lost a ton of their money and they might not feel they can retire anymore. Is that okay?
Yeah, I guess they keep working.
The churches that said yes to a TikToker who was calling churches for baby formula are now in hot water. The ones that said yes, not the ones that said no. The ones that said yes to helping are in hot water? Yeah, so it turns out that when you file as a nonprofit 501c3 with the IRS, you have to say exactly what you are doing as a nonprofit. Okay? And you can't divert from that, like at all, without refiling and going through a whole bunch of new verifications. What does that have to do with any of this? The churches didn't say no. They simply pointed the woman to the food banks they give money to because those churches know this and they are not licensed as food distribution in their ministry because you have to have kitchens, health violations, especially if you're helping out infants. You have to make sure that you go through other regulations to make sure you're not handing out items with bed bugs. There's no biohazards. The formula hasn't expired. That's ridiculous. I mean, it's not ridiculous, but it's ridiculous. The smaller ministries that said yes out of the goodness of their heart and doing what Jesus said got doxxed online by people congratulating them and calling for them to receive extra funding and praise. But they're not set up for food distribution. So the IRS will be knocking on their door and possibly stripping their ministry of their 501c3 and fining them heavily for helping a baby get formula.
A church does what churches supposedly exist to do, helps get formula to a baby, and now might lose nonprofit status over paperwork. Mega churches with private jets, tax exemptions intact. The churches that said no understood the bureaucracy. They protected their organizations first, referred people to proper channels. The churches that said yes out of spontaneous compassion, getting destroyed online and potentially financially. The lesson? The system punishes spontaneous kindness and rewards institutional caution. It values procedure over people, compliance over compassion. Notice how people screaming about Christian values went silent when actual Christians faced consequences for helping babies. It was never about values, always about control and selective enforcement.
Yep, there's that government overreach the Democrats are constantly voting for.
Y'all's priorities are completely out of whack. I just read that we have the highest percentage of citizens in prison. This whole time, the government, their answer to poverty is prison. And guess what? They're creating more poverty, cutting funding to food stamps. So I guess a bunch of those people are going to end up in prison. The only reason any of you have any sort of success is because you're leeching off other people that end up in prison. That's basically how this country functions. Credit cards. Oh, I get 2% cash back. Yeah, you're getting 2% cash back because someone's paying 28% interest. Oh, I'm so financially smart. Yeah, because other people are financially fucked because our government allows it. You're so stupid. You're getting fucked financially and you're too stupid to do anything about it. You don't see how that's a problem? If you really think that they're stupid and they're getting fucked financially, that's concerning, you know? That's not something to be happy about. You shouldn't be proud of yourself if someone's stupider than you and they're getting fucked on their finances. That means we live with a government that doesn't care about its own citizens. They don't care about us. You could die in your home and no one would give a shit. If this country really cared.
Why doesn't experience raises or seniority transfer between jobs? Why does changing employers mean starting completely over? Because the system is designed to trap you, keep you dependent on one employer, make you terrified of leaving, destroy collective bargaining power. Social Security tracks your work across employers because the government wants that data, but your raises, accumulated value, locked with each employer forever. This creates the trap. Stay in jobs you hate because leaving means losing everything built. Employers treat you worse because they know you're trapped. You lose negotiating power. You accept less because starting over feels impossible. For anyone feeling stuck, you're not crazy. The system is designed to make moving painful, but staying in toxic environments costs more long-term. Mental health, career trajectory, future opportunities all deteriorate. Powerless workers don't organize, don't demand change, don't threaten the status quo. That's not a bug in the system. That's the entire design.
I should be able to quit my job, and then when I go get another job, Social Security tracks the number of years I've worked. Why don't my raises transfer? Why doesn't my pension transfer? It doesn't make any sense unless they don't give a shit about us, which they don't. Oh, go figure.
Rents are going to double in this country.
Is that because nobody can afford to buy?
There's nothing to buy. Forget they can't afford it. The stuff they can afford is it's an 8-foot ceiling with old doors, old utilities. There's no intelligence in the house, old electrical. The only thing anybody wants are new homes. In fact, there's a third of the population, they don't even want a home. They want to live in these vertical buildings where they have amenities, swimming pools. Living in an apartment today is not like it was in the 80s. Dude, it's a resort. This deal that I just did, this is as good a real estate as you can buy, period. People can rent there for $4,500 a month. It would cost you 11 grand a month to own it, and you live there for $4,500. Probably got $250,000 worth of freaking date palms around you, a $3 million swimming pool, $1 million gym, and $50 million views. So that kind of real estate's not going away ever.
What are you for? Are you with America First or are you with MAGA? I think after this month, after this year, 2025 is the year that MAGA died. This is the year that this hat is no longer controversial. The hat is not edgy. The hat is not provocative. It doesn't even mean anything. This hat is dead. This hat is dead. Now, metaphorically speaking, and this is the future. America First is the future. Explicit, unambiguous, direct, actually has denotative meaning. America First is the credo. So anyway, we'll talk about all that.
The hat died because the promises died. Manufacturing didn't return. Infrastructure crumbled. Debt exploded. People freeze because heating assistance got cut. Solution? Rebrand. New name, same failed ideology. That's marketing, not leadership. But here's the real trick. Families making $100K are struggling. Healthcare costs are predatory. Housing became investment commodity. Childcare costs more than college. These are real problems. Instead of asking why six-figure households can't afford basics, they point at food stamps and say, there's your problem. Food stamps aren't causing healthcare costs, aren't causing housing speculation, aren't causing wage stagnation while corporate profits hit records. They're a symptom, not the disease. But it's easier to blame people below you than confront the system extracting wealth from everyone except the top. Don't let them divide you. Someone making $100K struggling isn't your enemy. Someone making $100 million while paying lower tax rates than both of you. That's the problem.
We got families who are working, struggling. They both work. Mom and dad both work, and they still don't get no help, okay? We got people that make over $100,000 a year that are struggling. That's not a problem. But food stamps, that's the freaking problem, right? Food stamps is the problem, right? Those lazy-ass people. No! The problem is the economic system. But y'all don't wake yourselves up. Wiki, exit biggie.
Millions of Americans are going to lose access to food in just a few days, not because there's no money, but because the Trump administration won't spend the money it already has. Because right now, with this government shutdown dragging on, you have the administration confirming it will not use existing contingency funds to keep food stamp benefits going. Even though that program, SNAP, it feeds more than 42 million Americans. That's 1 out of every 8 Americans, mostly kids, working families, older folks, veterans, and people with disabilities. You've got experts warning right now that this could trigger the worst hunger crisis since the Great Depression. While you have the Democrats asking the USDA to use the money that Congress set aside for this exact situation, the department said that, hey, their hands are tied, with them claiming that the funds are only for emergencies like hurricanes. But here's the thing. That's not what it said before. Earlier, USDA guidance literally said that those same funds should be used to keep SNAP running during a shutdown. But wouldn't you know it, that document has now mysteriously disappeared from their website. So yeah, understand, we are not out of money. We are just watching this Trump government choose who gets to go hungry. That is not a funding problem. That is a priorities problem. But also, that's just a bit of what's to come, so follow to stay in the loop.
We need to put America first. Okay, great. So food stamps for Americans that aren't getting paid enough to afford food. No. That is not what I want my tax dollars going towards. But you said America first, and I think Americans having access to food is pretty America first. No. Those people can get jobs if they want food. I'm so tired of people living off of my hard-earned tax money. So most people that rely on food stamps have a job. You know that, right? Like, you have to fill out paperwork and tell the government what your income is, what your bills are, what your living situation is, and then they decide if you qualify. If you have a job and you can't afford food, get a different job. You do realize the job market's in, like, the worst state it's been in a long time, right? Well, I've never needed food stamps, and I work hard for my money. I have a feeling you're a lot closer to needing food stamps than you are to being a billionaire, but what would you want your tax money to go towards anyway? Trump. What? I want my taxes going towards whatever Trump wants, because one day he's gonna notice me and he's gonna love me so much. Right. Me and my alpha male buddies worship him so much. So what happened to America first?
Why did they have this gigantic Jewish Republican coalition meeting? This is why right here. Because the average American is sitting here drowning in debt. The average American is sitting here drowning and trying to figure out how they're going to make their next car payment, house payment, bills, childcare. And every time they look to their government leadership, and every time they look to the White House, what do they see? A foreign flag, a foreign country, a foreign leader getting prioritized, getting taken care of, getting praised. And you know what? It doesn't make the American public feel very good. It doesn't make the American here working 40 to 50 hours a week, barely getting by, feel very good. When every time another foreign leader comes here, we cut him a fat check, and the forgotten American continues to sit there alone and forgotten by this administration. So you can try to work your way around this as much as you want, and you can try to point to different things to pretend like this isn't going on. But it is, Mr. President, and it's a lot worse than you're being told.
You were promised American workers would be prioritized. American families would come first. That was the entire pitch. Then you watch billions flow overseas while heating assistance disappears. Foreign leaders get red carpet treatment while your neighbor lives in a tent in the desert. The feeling that your government cares more about everyone else than you? That feeling is valid, because while they cut food stamps, heating assistance, and healthcare, they're not cutting defense contractor budgets, not cutting corporate subsidies, not touching billionaire tax breaks. They're cutting programs that help regular people survive, and calling it fiscal responsibility while writing blank checks to corporations and foreign governments America First was always branding, never policy. It made you feel heard while accomplishing nothing for you. The actual policy was wealth transfer upward, service cuts downward, all wrapped in a flag and sold as patriotism.
How does the government seize more power for itself? Well, they have to shrink the families. They have to shrink the individuals. They have to shrink the concept of individualism. And they've done that quite successfully. If you ever look around and try to understand the chaos that we find ourselves submerged in today, if you ever want to make sense of it, just understand that the government is attacking family in the same way that they did it for Black Americans in the 1960s. It's very simple. For Black Americans, it was all about welfare. Hey, don't marry the father of your children. Don't do that. The government will give you more money if you don't marry the father of your children. This interruption. Trillions of dollars since have been given to welfare programs, and Black America is poorer today than we were before those incentives began in the 60s. Think about that. Trillions of dollars spent on welfare, and Black Americans are poorer today.
Dear Charlotte, prices have skyrocketed here between the tariffs and loss of farm workers and everything else. During a recent trip to the grocery store, I shop about once a month. Items that used to cost me about $100 cost me $175. Not quite double, but close. The Trump regime has ended the low-income home energy assistance program that helped many poor people, disabled people, and senior citizens heat their homes in winter. We don't know how we will afford heat this winter. People are discussing how low to turn down the thermostat and how to dress in layers to try to keep warm. People are planning to block off bedrooms with heavy sheets of plastic and just heat living rooms and kitchens to save money. The whole family can sleep on the living room floor. They're sharing tips like take bubble wrap over your windows and make sure you wear a hat indoors, even to bed, because you lose a lot of body heat through your head. A friend of mine who was on the verge of homelessness was evicted from her apartment because she could not pay the rent. She is now living in a tent in the desert in New Mexico. She figures she's going to die there. I feel powerless to help her. I got her an application for an apartment where I live, where rent would be based on her income, and I offered to pay the application fee of $30 for her. But she's hundreds of miles away and I can't give her money for gasoline to drive here, and I'm not sure her car would even make it. I know it feels to her like no one cares, and I know many people care, people around the world care, but that's not going to be enough to save many of us. It's hard not to despair. I try to look at the bigger picture. My friend may not be saved, I may not be saved, but the future may be saved. We may help to save it, even if we ourselves are lost. I'm making chili today and baking bread. The chili has more onions and canned tomatoes and broth and less meat, so it's cheap. Homemade bread is always cheap. It's comfort food, and I am in need of comfort.
This is what it actually looks like. The real human cost of ideology over reality. Chili with more onions than meat, because that's what's affordable. Blocking off entire bedrooms with plastic sheeting. Wearing hats to bed to conserve body heat. A friend living in a tent in the New Mexico desert expecting to die there, while someone watches helplessly from hundreds of miles away. This isn't personal responsibility failure. This is systemic collapse playing out in slow motion. The most heartbreaking line, many people care, but that's not going to be enough to save many of us. Because caring doesn't pay rent. Thoughts and prayers don't provide heat. Empathy doesn't fill prescriptions or prevent evictions. This happens when you prioritize ideology over people, when you worship markets as gods that'll solve everything, when you cut every safety net while taking people's boots, then tell them to pull themselves up. The woman making bread for comfort understands something profound. Community and care matter more than economics. Making food, sharing what you have, finding comfort in small things, that's how humans survive when systems abandon them. For anyone in similar positions, the shame you might feel is manufactured. You didn't fail. The system failed you, deliberately and repeatedly. For anyone with resources, this is happening in your community right now. Food banks need donations. Heating programs need funding. Your neighbors need help, not judgment. Remember this when they ask for your vote. Remember the chili with more onions than meat. Remember the tents in the desert. Remember who promised help and who actually delivered. The cruelty was always the point. People are freezing, starving, living in tents, stretching meals with whatever's cheapest. And the conversation is whether they deserve help. This isn't complicated. This isn't partisan. This is basic decency versus systematic cruelty. You can't scream America first, then abandon Americans. Can't worship billionaires and expect them to care about your struggles. Can't eliminate every safety net, then act shocked when people fall through the cracks. The promises were always empty. The policies were designed to benefit people who didn't need help, funded by cutting support for people who did. We're watching the consequences in real time, and the people who voted for this are suffering just as much, maybe more, because they also have to face they were conned. To everyone struggling right now, making chili stretch, blocking off rooms, wondering how you'll survive winter, you deserved better. You deserved leaders who actually cared. An economy that worked for you, not just the already wealthy. You still deserve that. Drop a comment. What would real pro-American policy look like? What does actually putting citizens first mean? Subscribe, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and remember, when someone promises easy answers, ask who profits from your belief. Stay warm, stay fed, stay aware. This is Mindy Mirror. The system isn't broken, it's working exactly as designed. The question is, who's it working for?